are listening to KELP Las Cruces. Feed your mind, feed your soul with your local Christian radio station, 89.3 FM. Worldwide at KELPradio.com.
915 Talk is a production of Desert Voice Media. You can visit desertvoice.media to learn more.
915 TALK.
The world is looking at El Paso.
What will we say to the world? From the KELP studio in El Paso, this is 915 Talk.
And now your host.
Good afternoon, beautiful citizens of the borderland. This is 915 Talk, and I'm your host, Andy Frecka. And today we are broadcasting from the heart of the world's largest borderplex. We're here at the KELP studio in El Paso, and we have Kenny on the board. Kenny on the board, how you doing today?
Doing good, doing good. Another day above ground.
Well, praise
God must have a reason for it.
That's right, because we continue on our educational journey, Kenny on the board.
That is correct.
Yeah, we learn something new every day, and that's what we love about 915 Talk. And I know most of you are listening on 1590 AM, 95.9 FM here in El Paso. Maybe you're up at 89.3 FM in southern New Mexico, Las Cruces. But for those of you who don't like to listen to the radio but prefer to watch the radio, we have Mac Daddy Del Norte running our YouTube Live, our Facebook Live. If you want to find those, you can go to 915 Talk on YouTube or KELP Radio on Facebook. Mac Daddy Del Norte, you doing all right today?
I'm doing good, Andy. How about yourself?
Well, I have run out of superlatives to describe how great my day is going. But, Mac Daddy Del Norte, we recently had someone from a Christian counseling center on.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, and you shared with the whole borderland what your number one source of anxiety is.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
I do remember. It's money.
Money. Oh, is it because, you have too much money?
No. Not at all. It's the other way around.
What about you, Kenny, on the board?
Enough money?
or
yeah. Never. And it's not because I'm that frame of mind where $1 more, $1 more. No, there's not enough money. No, God provides, and I always survive.
Well, we're going to be talking about a lot of that today. We're going to be talking about what is true wealth, and and we have some financial advisors in here.
Oh, nice.
We're going to be talking money, guys.
I have a quarter to invest. Where should it go?
Yeah, they like that one.
We don't give specific advice.
Yeah. So this is one of those programs where I have to read a disclaimer.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, so normally I have Kenny on the board read it, but I forgot to get it to you in advance. So Are you ready? The following content is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended as investment, legal, or tax advice, nor a recommendation to buy or sell any securities. Did you hear that, Mac Daddy?
Yeah.
No buying or selling of securities. Truvize Financial Planning is a registered investment advisor in the state of Texas. While we may discuss tax planning strategies, please consult with a qualified tax professional before making decisions. All investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Did you know that, Kenny, on the board? Have you ever lost your principal?
I've lost my way.
Not your principles. Your principal.
Oh,
That's
I've
different.
never had principal. Except in school.
No, you have all kinds of
It would
principles.
have been okay
I don't
to
know if you
lose
have
that
any
principle.
But no, it is a good reminder for the listening audience that we're just here to give out information. If you really need someone to dig into your situation, hire someone, go meet them, talk to them. But we do have two very special guests in the studio today. They're with Truvize Financial Planning. Truvize is not in my dictionary, so it's spelled this way, Truvize, and you can go to truvize.com, and they're right here in El Paso. I know one of the programs here on KELP that really a lot of people are listening to, enjoying, is Faith and Finance, which is every afternoon. But these guys are right here in El Paso. So really happy to have them here in the studio. So wherever you are, maybe you're, where would you be? Chaparral, listening to 95.9 FM. Maybe you're out at Waco Tanks. Maybe you're about to go out for dinner and some souvenir shopping in Old Mesilla, listening to 89.3 FM. But wherever you are, let's give a very warm borderland welcome to the one, the only, Drew Harris and Jonathan Lopez. Drew and Jonathan, welcome to 915 Talk.
Thank you, Andy.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so we have a lot to dig into. I do want to talk about what is wealth. That's something my wife and I talk about a lot. Like, what are we actually shooting for?
Yeah.
Like what is our goal? But before we do that, I know we have a lot of business owners, small business owners who listen to 915 Talk. And if you go on Truvize.com, right there at the top, it talks about helping business owners pay less in taxes. So that's something that you do because it's on your webpage. So explain to me, what does that mean?
That's a loaded question there, Andy, but I'll start with this. The biggest thing that we try to focus on is the difference between tax planning and tax filing. Tax filing, tax prep is, you go to your CPA or you go to your tax person, give them all the info you have.
Right.
They make sure everything is filed correctly with the IRS.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the meat of the whole relationship.
With a CPA.
Right. Or, any. And there are CPAs that do great planning. So let me make sure that I don't get any CPAs on it. But for instance, I have a client who worked for a CPA for 30 plus years.
Right.
And a comment that she made one time when we were meeting was the amount of returns that they do every year in the amount of time that they have to do it. It is nearly impossible for them to give specific tax planning tips to each of these business owners.
Okay.
So that's where we want to fill that gap. And that's where, when you go on our website, that's part of the main point of the planning that we do. Obviously, we do other parts of planning, but when it comes to business owners, it's filling that gap. So, for instance, I don't know if you've owned a business or have business expenses that you've dealt with before, but you may go into a meeting with a CPA and they say, hey, you're going to owe X amount this year.
Okay.
Usually that's done in March or April of, let's say, 2025.
Right.
And we're talking about 2024's taxes.
Right.
So it's very reactive, right? There's not a lot that can be done. There are things that can be done, but there's not a lot that can be done once you're at that point.
Okay.
What we're talking about is being proactive.
Okay.
We're saying, okay, I know what's probably going to come in. I know what expenses are going to be spent. How can I be as efficient as I can possibly be to legally pay the least amount of taxes in my particular business or my particular situation for next year?
Okay.
Right? So that we can start implementing some of these strategies in 2025 so that when 2026 comes around, not only have you already done the planning, you already know the number and what it's going to be. Because that's the other thing, is dealing with the shock sometimes of the number.
Right. Yeah. So what would be maybe one example of a way a business could plan for next year? What would they be looking at?
I'll throw in real quick.
Yeah.
One example of that would be entity election. So you have many businesses operate as just a sole proprietor.
Right.
They're not a incorporated business. They're not an LLC. They're just a sole proprietor. The issue, though, with that is once you get over a certain amount of money coming in, so once revenue hits certain amounts of money, then using a corporation like an LLC or an LLC that's taxed as an S corp or a C corp, I won't go into all the alphabet soup, but you can set up your business through an entity that would help you to be able to pay less in, for instance, self-employment taxes than if you were to stay as a sole proprietor. There are costs in setting that up. So usually what we'll do is we'll come in and talk to the person and say, okay, what's come in, what goes out, what's the average, and does it make sense for you to pay what it costs to set up these entities? Because you're going to save more than that on self-employment taxes and other things. So that's one big part, is entity election and choosing, should I stay a sole prop? Should I be an LLC? If I am an LLC, should I tax myself as an S corp or a C corp? Or there are many different, things you could choose from the menu there.
Yeah, and a huge part of what we do is quarterbacking that entire situation. So I'll give you an example of something that I ran into this year. Was that a client had good advice, had done some research, and before coming in and meeting with us, wanted to go into an entity selection process and did so, but ended up setting up the incorrect entity, and then the person that he was working with forgot to file a form. And that had massive ramifications on his tax bill. Essentially, that put him in a situation where he would pay double. It was the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
Now, thank goodness he had a good tax preparer and somebody who he could work with, and then we came alongside him and got him into a position where that was limited. But a huge part of the tax planning side is not just the advice as far as do this, do that, but then it's the execution. Because the one thing that we know, especially from our experience as entrepreneurs, is that time is very limited for most business owners. Sure. And they're already putting out a ton of fires every day, trying to get stuff done, payroll done, whatever it is that's on their plate. And this is one of those things where it falls to the back burner, and then all of a sudden it's a problem and it has to be addressed, but usually it's too late.
Which you would think it wouldn't fall to the back burner, right?
No.
We're talking about taxes and how much thousands of dollars sometimes are being spent.
Right.
But like Drew said, absolutely. The other issue is maybe not even knowing that form should have been filed when it should have been filed. And, the CPA or the tax preparer knows those things. But again, when they're dealing with 2,000 returns,
sure,
it's hard to remember or to even know what's happening over here with this person. So that's where on our website we're trying to fill that gap. And like Drew said, be the quarterback between your tax filer, your tax prep person, and tax planning.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit more about this. But if you just joined us, we're with Drew Harris and Jonathan Lopez of Truvize Financial Planners. Now, can you maybe give us a short list, not everything, but outside of this kind of advice or planning, what other areas you focus on when you're meeting with people?
Yeah, sure. So we're we joke that everybody's a financial planner nowadays, but we are a true financial planning firm. So what that means is that when a client comes to us and wants to work with us, we build out a full comprehensive plan. And I always like to describe it as clients are coming to us because of a specific pain point, usually.
Yeah.
And by the time we're done with our process, there's no more ambiguity about those pain points. There's no more ambiguity about their financial situation in its complete entirety. It's just that a lot of times there's not enough time on the client to go out and do the research and figure it out, but also that's where our expertise comes in. So that's going to cover everything from the very basic foundations of an emergency plan, making sure you have enough money in the event that something goes wrong, to investment planning, where we're building out portfolios for clients. We're helping them execute those portfolios. To, like we've talked about, tax planning, which can include entity selection and setting up 401ks and doing those kinds of things, to debt planning.
Yeah.
And so it's very comprehensive, and it covers all the bases that are included in most people's financial life. And wow, honestly, we're really proud of how it's structured and what we do for clients. And that's why we founded Truvize, was we wanted to kind of move away from talking and just promising a lot, and really have a firm that was founded more on helping clients and making a real impact on their day-to-day. And so you'll kind of get that from us and the things that we say and what we do. So
yeah, that's great. And we're going to do something that's unprecedented on 915 Talk right now. If you're out there and you're listening and you have a financial question, you can call in. The number is 915-779-0016. And again, we'll just be, there's not a way to go into depth on air of the whole context of your situation, but we can hear about it, and Jonathan and Drew will just share their thoughts on it, and for informational purposes, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you. So again, the number is 915-779-0016. We were talking about tax planning for businesses. You were talking about the correct entity setup. I think that's super valuable, because for a lot of new entrepreneurs, really what they've identified is a customer pain point in a way to take care of it, but they might not have the structure set up. What would be for someone who's already past that, who has a business that's running smoothly, maybe doing well, maybe mid-size, I don't know. Yeah. What would tax planning look like for them? Maybe one or two specific points.
Yeah, well, I'll say real quick, another example of just recent encounter is even seasoned business owners.
Yes.
Okay? A lot of seasoned business owners haven't thoroughly put the time and effort, just because of, like we said, the restraints that come with being a business owner a lot of times, into that selection. So I'm dealing with a situation right now with a particular client that should have probably chosen a different entity selection a long time ago and left a lot of tax dollars on the table. So this happens. So
and even the ones that know, like Drew is saying, sometimes you'll have these business owners that these business owners. One in particular that I was thinking of as you were talking about that was a business example that had done really well, but had really never had these conversations. And something that has come up just in the last 7-8 years are with the Trump tax could help favor business owners if they were to use them correctly.
Right.
It used to be, without getting too much in the weeds, it used to be the conversation was to that.
Okay.
Where you can actually potentially get a larger deduction if you pay yourself a higher salary, because there's a calculation that's based on salary rather than total pay. So again, without getting into all the weeds there, that's one where even CPAs who have been in business for 30, 40 years that have always just done it the one way, many times that it's called QBI, Qualified Business Income Deduction. Right. Many times that QBID conversation is not even had. Right. So there's just a lot. There's a lot out there. The tax code is massive, right? It's thousands of pages. And so really what we're offering and we're talking to business owners about is, let us take some of that off your plate. Let us look at your situation and then give you some specific possible recommendations that could make actual dollar difference without it turning into this, massive project that takes over their whole livelihood, because that's what people don't want, especially business owners.
Of course. Yeah. Again, we're with Drew Harris and Jonathan Lopez of Truvize Financial Planners, TRUVIZE.com. The phone lines are open if you have a financial planning question for them, 915-779-0016. We're about to go into a break. Before we do, Drew, you told me when you came in that you used to come into this radio station. Tell me about that. I
did once.
Oh, just once. Yeah. What was the program?
Well, I honestly don't remember what the name of the program was. It was a long time ago. I had a full head of hair and a mohawk, though.
Okay.
And it had something to do with punk rock and stuff, and my friend had a connection here. And I'm a total corporate sellout now, so I don't really talk about it too much.
It's been so fun for me because our listeners know I'm relatively new to the radio station. Just having people come through and tell stories of the old days. Of course, KELP goes way, way back. It's KL Paso. And I even had someone walk in just as they sat down for the interview. They said, I used to own this station. It was before it was the Christian format, and so this whole history, and it's been fun to be a part of. But so it was fun to hear that KELP used to have a Christian punk rock show. So that's fun. We don't currently have it, and we're not planning to go.
Let's bring it back. I can't bring back the mohawk because it would stop halfway down my head. We could do something else.
Yeah, very fun. And we're about to go into a break. Before we do, I also do want to remind you, this is our daily reminder, that 915 Talk is listener supported, and it is a production of Desert Voice Media. You can visit desertvoice.media to listen to all previous 915 Talks, or this conversation. It'll be available tomorrow on all podcast formats, YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. Really appreciate all of you who listen, all of you who support us financially, praying for us. We really believe that, it's our calling to serve the city, and this is our effort to do that each and every afternoon. We're going to go into a break. We're not going into a break. We're going into a break. Sorry about that. Do not touch that dial.
We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
915 Talk is listener supported and is a production of Desert Voice Media. That's right. It's people just like you who make this program possible. Together with Desert Voice, you can learn how to better serve our neighbors and pray for our community. To become a Desert Voice Media partner, you can visit desertvoice.media. That's right. That's the website, desertvoice.media. Take a look and join us today in reaching our borderland for Christ.
915.
testify.
I used to be a very angry person at the world, being young, having kids, having a wife, being a father, just meeting those expectations that the world puts on you. It's not about the world, it's about, your relationship with God. And I didn't realize that until I was older, and because I was living a life that I shouldn't have been living a sinful life, living for the flesh instead of living for God. I was hanging around people I probably shouldn't have hung around with, drinking, going out to parties, and coming home like 2, 3 in the morning. There was one day that I completely broke down. My son was asking me like, Dad, how come you're like this? How come you're always mad? And yeah, that day I did end up bringing out my Bible. I just broke down and started crying, because I felt the way Paul felt. Read your Bible, guys. If you don't know what to read, go into Proverbs, go into Psalms. God, He's protected me in so many different ways. He's the reason why I'm here. I'm trying to help other people reach God. He could truly change your life. My name is Miguel Ipave. I'm from El Paso. And if Jesus did this for me, I know He could definitely do it for you.
And they overcame Him by the blood of the Lamb
and by the word of their testimony.
desertvoice.media.
We all have the ability to touch the lives of those around us. To someone going through a difficult time, a text, a call, or a visit can mean so much. Reach out to the veterans in your life today. Let them know they're not alone. One simple act can make all the difference. That's the power of one. If you're a veteran in crisis or know one who is, visit veteranscrisisline.net for free 24/7 confidential support.
We're back. You're listening to 915 Talk.
We are back, and you are listening to 915 Talk. Thank you for not touching that dial. And if you just joined us, we are with Drew Harris and Jonathan Lopez of Truvize Financial Planners. And we have made this unprecedented step of opening up the phone lines. And we have Fernando on the phone. Fernando, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing wonderful. I understand you have a small business tax question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, fire away.
So, alrighty. So here's my question. Well, first of all, a little bit of background. So earlier this year, I believe in January, I filed in for an S Corp. It was for an S Corp. And the reason that I filed it in under El Paso County is because I am the owner of a duplex, and I'm currently living in one of the units, and I'm renting the other unit.
Okay.
So my question is, at the time of 2025 tax season comes in, and then we'll be filing in the taxes for the S Corp, is there something that we can do for us to be prepared into like next season's about the tax and all that stuff? Or it's my first time doing this type of process and getting a corporation running. So, yeah, that's my question mainly.
Gotcha. Drew and Jonathan?
So I would say, first thing, when it comes to real estate, totally different world than just the regular business expenses that, for instance, an active business would be able to use, deduct. Right. So we're talking here, Fernando, about passive income. And with passive income, yes, so you filed that S Corp election. Usually, again, if you filed it in January, then the S Corp election should be valid for the remainder of the year. As long as that was done correctly, I would make sure with your tax professional that it was filed with, it's not filed with the county. The S Corp election is a federal tax document, so that needs to be filed with the IRS. But as long as that was filed correctly, then yes, that would apply for 2025. But again, something that I'll mention here, and this could be for all listeners, is any real estate deductions, unless you are a real estate professional, which there are some steps to go through that you need to qualify to be a real estate professional. But any real estate deductions are only passive income deductions. So those deductions do not offset any of your active income. So when you talk about, things we could do, is there anything else we can do? Remember that even if you were able to come up with a ton of real estate deductions, they'd be limited. They wouldn't be able to be used against your active income. and I believe it's $3,000 is the maximum passive loss that you can take in 2025. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about how can I find more deductions. These are passive income deductions.
Okay, I understand. Okay.
Did that answer your question, Fernando?
Yeah, it gave me a little bit more sense of what I need to be looking out for all this year entirely. I also have another question. I'm not sure how involved you guys are into like real estate investments and all that stuff, but just quick question, just throwing it out. How will it work if I'm already like kind of planning or foreseeing putting into the market this property, like I'm planning on selling it in the next upcoming months, and if I'm having like a contract, will that contract that I'm having right now with my renter, will it be like transferred during the tax on this year, or I don't know how that will be working out?
That question, Fernando, that is definitely that seems more on the attorney side of the answers.
Gotcha.
Not even the accounting, CPA side. That's an attorney question.
How we would approach, like from a financial planning perspective, everything that you're talking about right now is really what it comes down to is that the right investment for your overall situation. So where we would come in would be you coming in and having just a complete look at your overall financial picture, see what your cash flow, money in, money out looks like, and then help assist you in saying, hey, look, this looks like a viable option for you. And maybe even you coming in, approaching us with that question and us saying, hey, you need to talk to a real estate attorney. Here's a guy that we trust and know. And that's us quarterbacking that situation, because the nuance is very, very important. The details are extremely important as to whether this decision is better than that decision. But I think the best thing is that you're being proactive. I mean, having the courage to call into a radio station and then ask these questions is a really good sign that those answers are out there, and you're going to find those answers, and there are people that can help you make those decisions. I would much rather see a person who doesn't know the answer and want to go out and find that answer than somebody who just assumes that this is the way it could be done, because that's how you can get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to avoid at all costs.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. That's great. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, and Fernando, thank you for calling in. Really appreciate it. And we're back. We're with Drew Harris and Jonathan Lopez of Truvize Financial Planners. Our phone lines are open today, 915-779-0016. Really appreciate Fernando with his call. And in a minute, we're going to be talking about, I think it's outside of what we've been talking about so far, but what is true wealth?
Yeah, sure.
What does that mean? Like I said, that's something my wife and I talk a lot about. Like what are we actually shooting for? Our personal journey has been interesting, just because many of our listeners know the story. We lost everything a few years ago when we had to flee the nation we were living in as missionaries. And at that point, we lost everything. And so now here we are in our late 40s, kind of just starting over and trying to understand like what are our financial goals. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation. But first, we're going to talk with Charlie One. Charlie One's out in the road. What do you see out in the roads this afternoon, Charlie?
Andy, quite a few trouble spots right now. Actually, quite a few crashes have occurred. First, let's go to the east side where we have a very busy intersection here, George Dieter and Edgemere, with a crash that has PD working that one, George Dieter and Edgemere. Then we go to Sunfire and Sun Country. Now, this one has the EMS there, injury crash here, Sunfire and Sun Country. Hawkins and Industrial, kind of close to you, Andy. We have a crash there. PD will be working that one. Hawkins and Industrial, busy intersection there. Central, let's go to Central where we have a Gateway East and Geronimo. Not only do we have a crash there, but that's a construction area with barrels set up and everything. Lanes limited, so it's going to be more congestion there, Gateway East and Geronimo with that crash. Central also kind of close to downtown, actually closer to UTEP. Schuster and Campbell, we have a crash working down. Busy intersection there, Schuster and Campbell. Now, where do I see the traffic kind of flowing slowly or not flowing too well? I-10 East Piedras to about rentals. You're going to be kind of tapping on the brakes right there. Andy, back to you.
Thank you, Charlie One. And Charlie One, we have two financial planners here in the studio this afternoon. And I think a lot of people are now thinking about their personal finances because that's what we're discussing. Now, if they were to try the Daily Menudo, how would that affect their personal finances?
Well, one thing they're gonna enjoy that menudo, and then they're not gonna be thinking about the finance while they're enjoying that menudo maybe afterwards. But they're eating that menudo. Nothing else counts. Nothing else matters.
That's right.
At that moment, you're happy right there at that moment right there. And then where do you find that menudo? Delicious menudo every day, plus Mexican plate seafood at Mi Burrito Cafe, 3120 Traywood. Andy, back to you.
Thank you, Charlie One. We'll talk soon. And I also want to remind our listeners, thank you to KELP, Impact Partner, Caring Companions. If you have an older relative or loved one who needs some extra help around the house, caringcompanionsep.com. Really good folks over there. I have friends who use them. They speak very highly of them. Their owner, Amy Minjares, has been on this program. And, it might be that you just need a break for a few hours a week, and they can help you out. So it's caringcompanionsep.com. Before we were talking traffic, we were talking about what is true wealth. So Drew Harris and Jonathan Lopez of Truvize Financial Planners, what is true wealth?
Go ahead, Drew.
We've had many meetings together, so we should be better at transitioning back and forth to each other. But one of the things that we've always talked about and we've always tried to coach and help clients with is an understanding that wealth has less to do, although it is correlated with how much money you have and how much you have to invest. And it really comes down to choices, right? Okay. Having the freedom to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And I mean, from a Christian's perspective, having the flexibility to be obedient and do what the Lord has called you to do with your life. And I think that that's a huge thing, and something that really needs to be understood is that, the Lord hasn't called all of us to earn tons of money and be rich and be wealthy and have large retirement account balances in 1970 Fords. He's called us to all kinds of different paths, and we each have a role that we have to play when it comes to that. So it's much more about good stewardship.
Okay.
That's exactly what I was going to touch on there is stewardship.
Yep.
And when you look at the Bible and the parable of the talents, there was one and there was two and there was five.
That's right.
Not everyone got the same thing.
It's interesting.
I think also when we think about money as stewards, it should help negate a lot of the negative things that can come from money. Right?
So what does that mean?
So if I was just a steward, if I was given all this money that I have and I viewed it that way,
yes,
rather than this is all because of me,
right?
It helped pride and envy, right? Those are the two biggest things that come from money, and they come from a lot of things, but money really, it reveals a lot of that in all of us. And I think that's something that even in our business, constantly talking about money, constantly talking about how do we pay less in taxes, how do we grow our money, how do we have more money, how we also, the beauty of working with Drew and us both being Christians is that we could also narrow it down to, hold on, first of all, this is not your money, you're a steward. And second, what's the point? What, right? Why? Yeah. Why do we have this? And I think that's in every first meeting we have with a client. We usually start asking some of those questions. We actually go through an exercise. I'll go through it quickly.
All right, let's do it.
So first question that we'll ask a client is, let's say you went home.
This is actually why I do this program, so I can
Well, we're going to bill you afterwards.
and you don't have to answer these, Andy, but these are the questions. First question is, let's say you went home today, you opened the mailbox, you won the lottery.
Okay.
It's not the biggest lottery, but let's say it's $5 million.
Yeah.
What are some things that pop into your mind right away that you'd want to do and spend with that money?
Right.
So usually, that's the first question.
Yeah.
Second question is not as exciting. It's actually a little sobering.
It's pretty messed up.
Yeah.
It's like you're not going to win the lottery.
No, you're not going to just not win the lottery.
Even worse, Andy. This one is, let's say you went to the doctor yesterday and he or she said, you know what, things are not looking good.
Right.
You don't have very long to live.
Mm.
You may not make it past this week.
Wow.
What are some things that you would immediately start to think about that you would have wish you would have spent more time doing, or wish you would have been able to go see or do? And
now, in this scenario, have I also won the lottery, or is it just
good question? Maybe we should add that in there, right?
Yeah.
A little bonus.
Right.
The reason we start with that exercise first, I'm fast forwarding a little bit here, is because usually the first part of that exercise, we start talking about big goals. I'd pay off my house. I want to go travel
That's the
Europe.
first thing that came to my mind.
I want to
travel. Pay off the house.
Yes, I want to travel. I want to pay for my kids' school. I want to, things.
Yeah.
As we work our way down in that exercise, it always ends up switching from things
to generosity.
Time.
Oh, time. Wow. Yeah.
Time ends up being, I wish, I would like to spend more time with my parents, with my kids, with my family, at church, helping people. You start to get to, so when you talk about wealth, it's those things that are what matter. And I think wealth and money is just the tool to be able to, like Drew said, allow you to have the flexibility to do those things that matter.
That's right.
When it doesn't matter if I get paid, it doesn't matter how much I get paid. I'm doing this because it's what I believe that God is calling me to do.
Yeah.
Super interesting. So so after they say they pay everything off, then it has to do with time. Then it has to do with what's actually really important.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And so then true wealth is what?
I think going back to what Drew said, Drew hit the nail on the head. I think true wealth is freedom, flexibility, the ability to take the time that you want to do the things that you want to do, that God has called you to do, without the barriers of, sorry, but I need to go make another buck because I have X bill to pay.
That's right.
So when you can limit, it's part of the other reason of why when we talk about true wealth, it doesn't even necessarily mean you have to be a millionaire and larger. We have many clients that had relatively nondescript careers.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't make tons of money that people would think of.
Right.
And yet I would count them as very wealthy.
Yep.
Because they not only saved and were good stewards and diligent with saving, but they also kept overhead very low. So they now have the ability to do the things they want, do the things maybe God is calling them to do without the shackles of debt or the shackles of a very large overhead or lifestyle that they got used to. So again, I know that's a long answer to your question there, Andy, but I think it's flexibility, it's freedom.
Yeah, and I think the reason we take this from a financial perspective to this context is because usually when the approach is growing, obtaining for that, only for that purpose, ironically enough, a lot of times you get yourself in financial trouble.
Yes.
And you end up buying things that you couldn't afford, trying to live a life that you can't afford, etc. It's godliness with contentment is great gain.
Yes.
Right. And I think that the harsh reality that of just living in a fallen world and the way that things are is that you could do every single financial thing right over your lifetime and it mean nothing because it's all wiped out for whatever reason from some circumstance we've all been through tragedies in our life, right?
Yeah. And
so that's why it ultimately comes down to is walking in obedience to the Lord and being a good steward of what he has put in your path. I think that's if there's an income problem in the household because there's laziness, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about going out, doing the things that we should be doing and being obedient. But the reality is that sometimes God calls us to careers and ministry, whatever it is, and that just isn't going to pay you $1 million.
Sure.
So it's just a matter of doing the best you can to be a good steward of that, trusting in the Lord. He's promised us to provide for our needs. We know that we don't need to worry about those things, and just doing what you can in those circumstances. But then also for those who have been, as Christians, those people who have been blessed with excess, they need to have a heart of giving and realize that this is the Lord's and that they need to be working, whether that's a valuable skill that leads to great income, whatever it is, to using that wealth for for the glory of God. You know, that's part of their job as a good steward. So we all have a role to play in this.
Sure.
And but yeah, wealth has nothing to do with money that much.
Right. And I think that's the biggest thing. I know that could sound weird coming from financial planners, right? That's our entire career and what we talk about every day. But it's part of why I think it's part of why we both love what we do the way that we do it, because it's not about how can we just get the most cars and the most watches and the most houses and the most. Now, there are sometimes you might want to spend money on that, and great.
Yeah.
But that's not the point.
Right.
I think that's what we're trying to get down to. What's the point of what we're doing? And so if we first, you had Mark Duchesne on a few days ago, and you were talking about how do you keep the motivation for working out, and Well,
I don't. Just kidding.
Well, with money, I'll talk to clients and tell them, if we don't have a good why, if we don't have a good what's the point, then you're not going to stick to the things that we talk about. You have to be able to have something there that is powerful and meaningful and can stick with you.
A pearl of great price.
There we go.
Oh, I like that. That's going on the website. Just kidding.
But yes, and going back to what Drew was saying, in today's society, just social media and kind of the look at me, it's very difficult for all of us to not fall into the trap of trying to keep up with what others have or are doing, or to then end up saying, well, gosh, why not me? Why don't I have that? Why don't I? And that's, I think, something we really wanted, as we were talking about this topic, really wanted to hammer home from people who see millionaires, multiple millionaires, and then not. All the full spectrum of people. I can tell you, and we can both tell you, that wealth is not found just in the money. There are very, very wealthy people that I could think of that are miserable, that we've sat with. And there are people who you would not consider very wealthy that, like I said, are very wealthy in what matters.
Right.
Yeah, we could tell you a ton of stories about that, but there have been several impactful situations I think that each of us have been through where, and because I do think there is a tendency, no matter how much money you have, to think that there is security in that, that there's peace of mind there. And what I have found is that it's not so much the quantity of money that is giving or providing the peace of mind. It's the intentionality of how you spend your money. Usually, right, it's not that X amount of dollars are in the bank or whatever it is, because the target just moves further and further and further when you get to that level. But it really comes down to is the stewardship and you being intentional with how you spend your money and understanding what are the reasons for why we're spending X amount on this and this and this and this. That's stewardship, and that's usually where you find most people have the most financial peace, which is when there's an active, like a proactive approach to their finances, and there's intentionality in how they're spending, as opposed to just kind of winging it. And then it's depressing when you look at your account at the end of the month, like, oh my gosh, where did it all go? Or where did this go? That's stressful.
For sure. Yeah, and if you just joined us, in Jonathan Lopez of Truvize Financial Planners, Truvize, TRUVIZE.com. Our phone lines are open, 915-779-0016, if you have a financial planning question for them. Fernando called earlier asking about small business tax advice and specifically for real estate investment. Enjoyed that phone call. Again, that's 915-779-0016. What is the number one financial mistake that most people make?
I think Drew just touched on it. And it's not just the number one mistake most people make, it's the number one mistake most businesses make as well.
Okay.
And that's not knowing the numbers. Not knowing. I'm telling you, we couldn't tell you how many times you sit down with somebody and you say, even as simple as how much do you make, and not really even knowing that number. But how much do you spend on this or on this or on this? And it's 99.9% of the time that those numbers aren't really known. You do have some people that are, they're on it and everything's in a spreadsheet, and but most are not. And that is the number one mistake, is not understanding cash flow. If everyone out there listening would just be able to narrow down how much comes in, how much goes out, and into which categories, you'll be ahead of most people. Because that's the starting point. You can't go anywhere unless you know where you're starting.
Right.
And like Drew was saying, too many times all of us, just end up just kind of flying by the seat of your pants and how much is left? Oh, okay. And then it's next month, and then it's years. And then you start to see, oh my goodness, I've wasted all this time. I only have X amount of time left.
Yeah.
I should have sat down and looked at this. And that part is not complicated.
Right.
That part can be done.
And along those lines, it's crazy because there are so many cool tools that you can use that are really inexpensive and affordable for everyone. Yep. One of those we love, and this is a great tidbit for everybody listening, is Monarch Money.
Okay.
And they've kind of become, the leader, I guess, in like the budgeting app space. But it's so simple. You download the app, you link your bank accounts, the accounts you spend out of, it categorizes most of it for you. And today, I don't know if you saw the email, today they even let you link your Amazon account to it so you don't have to go through. My wife and I, we always struggle with the Amazon accounts because some of it goes in groceries, some of it goes in miscellaneous, whatever our categories are. And that tediousness is what keeps people from doing it. And you link your Amazon account, it automatically categorizes, hey, this is for toiletries or this is for groceries.
Interesting.
And you can do some small tweaking to it and set up rules where, like, one time you say, hey, McDonald's, that's entertainment. Sorry, Mark, don't tell anybody. But that's for entertainment. And from now on, whenever it sees that McDonald's was spent, it throws it into that budget category.
McDonald's is not groceries.
Well, I mean, maybe my
For
wife is,
depending
in our household, it's not.
It's
Let me just say that.
Yeah.
To the kids' demise, right?
So the name of the app is Monarch?
Monarch Money. Yeah,
Monarch
great
Money.
tool.
Yeah, it's interesting because, again, my personal journey for those who are interested, my wife and I have had a hard time finding an app that we found to be user-friendly. So we'll definitely check that out.
I think that there's always going to be a layer of, complexity to finances, but Monarch Money and apps, there's a lot of them that do the same thing, but Monarch seems to work the best. Okay. Once you get it set up and you get it running and you put some time into it, it really is easy for you to go in there and say, hey, look, we have this much money left over for groceries this month. Or we have this much money left over for eating out at restaurants or whatever it is. And you no longer feel lost.
Right.
Right. Or like flying by your seat or whatever that saying is, right?
Yes.
Yeah. You feel like I have some control over where things are coming in and going out so that I can be super intentional instead of just saying, yeah, we'll make it work. Because one of the things I think happens a lot of times with us is that we tend to spend the same money over and over in our head. Oh, I've got this $100 here or $50 here or $25 here from that. But then you go out and in your head, you've spent that like 5 times.
Yeah.
Right.
So this just gives that intentionality.
And I'd also say, too, this is not just, like we said, not just personal business. It also doesn't matter the amount of income.
No.
No. People coming in with large amounts of monthly income that just disappears. And usually, again, going back to what we were saying, that's just the lifestyle creep of making a little more, you spend a little more, and there's no plan, there's no goal for the money.
Right.
Just telling it where to go rather than it kind of pulling you along of wherever the next fad is going.
Right. Okay, so love all of this. I think we need to talk about something else, though. We need to address the elephant in the room, Jonathan Lopez and Drew Harris of Truvize Financial Planners, and that is the murky world of financial planning and how you view it and how Truvize handles this very strange world of going to someone and giving them money for advice.
Yeah.
I think you used a good adjective.
Yeah.
Yep.
Murky. When 2017, when we launched this firm, the main word that we stuck on was transparency. What the industry deals with, and what so many clients and people who are, not wanting to hear from an advisor or a planner deal with, is this lack of transparency. Not really understanding what's in it for this guy to tell me what he's telling me.
Right.
How much does this person make to tell me what he's telling me?
Yeah. What's his commission on
what
he's offering me?
Yes. What what's your angle, man? And usually, and honestly, we deal with it all the time. You tell somebody, "What do you do?" "Oh, I'm a financial planner, I'm a financial advisor." Immediate guard up.
Sure.
What are you going to sell me, right?
Right.
And so that's something we and the industry.
So far, it's the Monarch planning app. That's what I understand. You guys are.
Shoot, we don't make any money.
I'm joking.
Quick disclaimer: we have no shares in Monarch.
I wish we
did. I would be happy to be transparent about those shares if I had them.
And so that's what and I think the industry is moving away from, and it's starting to get to the point of giving clients. The way that we structure our plans is it gives clients choice.
Yep.
It says, look, if you just want advice and you don't need somebody to manage your money, you want to do it on your own, you can.
Right.
If you just have some questions and want to meet one time, you can. If you want ongoing quarterbacking and planning, you can. And you know exactly how much it costs and exactly what you're getting. And you would think that would be the norm, but it's not.
Yeah, so you charge for time for meeting with you. Is that correct?
I would say, and you could chime in, Drew, but it's more about complexity.
Okay.
Yes.
Because some will take more time or less time, but it's more about complexity. And so we have tried to, if you go to our website, you've tried to segment complexity and also allowing for some do-it-yourselfers to be able to say, look, I think I'm doing everything right here. Can you look at this and make sure and can have some validation? Or others that say, I have no idea. I really need help now and ongoing.
Right.
And we have a process for that too.
Okay.
And it's not just time. There are some times where some clients were spending much more time than at other times in their life.
Sure.
Yeah.
But we're there, we're available, we're meeting with them on an ongoing basis so that when those things come up, we're already engaged with them and it doesn't cost them any more to work on that particular problem.
Right. Here's another question. Many of our listeners are churchgoers. Many of them are involved in nonprofits. Do nonprofits and churches need financial planning advice? Is that something that you have ever been involved in?
Yeah, we haven't done. I'm not going to sit here and say we've done specific financial planning advice for churches or nonprofits. I have close friends that are pastors and stuff.
Yeah.
And I can definitely tell you that even though we tend to think of business from a worldly standpoint, maybe even a negative connotation in views of like ministry and stuff, but the reality is that a church is God's business. And so there's income and there's expenses, and those things have to be managed with great stewardship as well. And churches can find themselves in trouble when they don't do that.
Right.
And that's a tough one because there's always a balance between faith and stewardship.
Sure.
And I think that's why we have to approach those things with wisdom and discernment and prayer.
Right.
But absolutely, I don't think that's, although we may have never done that specifically, like professionally, we haven't had that happen. We're always open to helping out. And if there are churches that have questions or anything like that, we're happy to answer those questions. But because it's the same thing, right?
Right.
It's just that the purpose is for God's glory, right?
Right.
Yeah, and you were talking about transparency, watching the numbers, paying attention, all of that, and I can only agree that that's maybe even more important in quote unquote God's business, of the church. So love that. It's just something that crossed my mind. I was thinking, maybe there's some churches out there that could use just an outside point of view. Maybe just a short meeting of some kind. So we only have a few minutes left.
Sure.
Mac Daddy Del Norte is listening. Kenny on the board is listening. I'm listening. We, the three of us, are not men of great wealth. In a worldly speaking, spiritually, we all have great wealth. They're in the back behind the glass laughing. What would your advice be for someone who is not the millionaire coming in? Like, how would you approach that for someone who's on their journey and maybe needs a little bit of advice?
Remember, I have a quarter.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it ultimately, the first thing is the spiritual issue, right? Where being content, and you guys, I mean, I'm sure all of you are content with, you've made deliberate choices for what you're doing.
Sure.
But the first, you just start at the very basics, which is what we talked about, which is, first of all, money in, money out, having a good understanding of how much is coming in and where it's going.
Right.
And then I think the big thing after that is just you need an emergency fund, right?
Right.
So you need to get some money in savings, hopefully like a high yield savings account that pays a little bit more than a traditional savings account. And you want to get that money in there, and you want to start building that emergency fund. After that, then you want to take a look at your debt. If you have any debt, do you have any credit card debt? Do you have any auto loans with high interest rates? Anything that's really high interest rate, you should be trying to focus on any excess cash that is available, paying that down as soon as you can, because that's just money that's being wasted over the long term. That may be a slow process. Everybody's situation is different, but that may be a slow process. But the goal would be to be as flexible as possible, because maybe income isn't very consistent or whatever it is. And the lower your fixed expenses is, like the lower that, cost is every month to live, the more flexibility you have to endure what may be coming. And that's wise for anybody. But that's your foundation of a good financial plan before you get into investing or anything like that. You gotta pay down your debt. You gotta have an emergency fund, and you gotta have a good understanding of what's coming in and out every month.
Love it. Jonathan Lopez and Drew Harris of Truvize Financial Planners, really appreciate you guys coming in today. Wide-ranging conversation. So many things that we can talk about concerning finances, financial planning, but I'm glad we were able to touch on the topics that we were able to cover in the past hour. Again, appreciate you coming in. It's Truvize, TRUVIZE.com, if you want to get in touch with Jonathan and Drew. And I think that we, as the kingdom of God in El Paso, let's pay attention to what's happening with our money. Let's be intentional. I'm reminded of the psalm that Moses wrote, Lord, teach us to number our days aright, that we may gain hearts of wisdom. And just making sure that we're making the most of what we've been entrusted with, both financially and with time. So appreciate you guys coming in. And as we always say, let's learn to love our city, love our neighbor, and give God all the glory. This has been 915 Talk. You have been listening to 915 Talk, a production of Desert Voice Media. In order to listen to previous editions of 915 Talk, just visit desertvoice.media. Let's learn together to love our city, love our neighbors, and give God all the glory.